So welcome everybody. My name is Kate Hartman and I am the Graduate Program Director for Digital Futures at OCAD University. I'll begin with our land acknowledgement. OCAD University acknowledges the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land on which our university stands and where I am located today. So it is with great enthusiasm and excitement that we welcome you to Future Now, the Digital Futures Graduate Thesis Exhibition for 2021. We are so grateful to be here with all of you, with our students, faculty, staff, and administrators from OCAD University, with our illustrious alumni, our colleagues, our collaborators, our industry partners, our friends, and our families. This event and exhibition features thesis projects that engage, investigate, and explore a wide range of technical and socio-cultural topics. Through digital making, the soon-to-be graduates of the OCAD U's Digital Futures program reimagine, augment, and actualize the futures they envision by creating them in the now. It has been quite the year. I'll just leave it at that. But I have to say, having the privilege of working with this cohort of students has been amazing. I am impressed by their enthusiasm, energy, perseverance, and vision for the future that we have ahead. And so yeah, I'm just very glad to be here with all of you. I'm very excited to launch this work out into the world. And to see what happens next. So this evening will consist of sneak previews of the thesis projects, 2 panel discussions, and then we will have breakout rooms where you can meet the makers and attend live Q&A demonstrations or performances. So yeah, that's kind of what we'll be doing. As we go through the project previews and the Q&A and the panel discussions, we'll just invite everyone to turn off their video and sound. And then at the end, when we open up breakout rooms, we'll invite you to turn back on your video and sound and to socialize and to talk to makers one-on-one and see all kinds of great things. So with that, I will pass it over to Emma Westacott.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much, Kate, and welcome. Again, it's always so exciting to get to this particular point of the year and to get a chance to celebrate everybody's work. So, oh, my cat just jumped on my table with perfect Zoom timing. But so what I'd like to do is to show, I'm going to share my screen to show a sneak peek of some of the work that's been made this year.
It's beautiful here, isn't it? I used to live nearby once upon a time. My name is Therese. I'll be your guide for today's personalized tour of Takaranto.
could go about the idea?
I haven't thought about that.
Do not cancel on me. Not yet. This is going good, I believe. Are you there? Oh no, did I lose you?
Wow, Lee, what do you think?
I don't think so. I will write a book in my life.
I hear you. You could let this thought rest with me and visit it another time.
Imagine a glorious Indo-future world, an alternative future timeline where India has thrived and was never colonized. A world that speaks to the difficult issues of our actual present, with both utopian optimism and satirical critiques, while addressing the needs of this fictional future.
Thanks a lot. What an exciting selection of work. And just to remind everybody that there'll be more information on the individual websites and available in the breakout rooms at the end of today's session. So I think what I'll do now is jump actually straight to our first panel introduction. And so with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our very first panel, Reimagining the Past, Decolonizing the Future, which is going to be hosted by Imani Men, with Nadine, Valsine, Priya, Bandadika, and Lillian Lung. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's my pleasure to host this panel about reimagining the past and decolonizing the future through virtual production, historical research, and community-focused workshops. I've had close contact with these students, with Nadine, Lillian, and Priya, and because I've worked with them, I've supervised them. But I'd like to invite Nadine, Lillian, and Priya to give a little bit more information about the work, and to just briefly describe it for our audience.
I guess you named me first, so I get to go first. So our Home in Haunted Land is a 10-minute of linear virtual reality project that examines the colonial history that's embedded into the names of significant places in the city. And it uses a combination of, it's a research creation project that uses decolonial methodology, Afrofuturism, and it's also an exploration of 3D storytelling.
I guess I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My thesis is called Activating Indo-Futurism, applying a lens adapted from post-colonial futurisms. Through this thesis, I intend to activate this largely unexplored futurism discipline for India called Indo-Futurism by seeking inspiration from post-colonial futurisms such as Afrofuturism and indigenous futurism. And I use this opportunity to imagine an Indo-future world wherein India was not colonized, and how would it evolve in this decolonized future. I do this by creating 5 artifacts from this future, and I kind of unite them and propose an Indo-futurist manifesto based on the findings of my research.
And my name is Lillian Leung, and my thesis project is Future Through Memory, Virtual Storytelling in Toronto's Chinatown. So Future Through Memory is a participatory workshop framework and also an interactive documentary co-created with and for the Toronto Chinatown community. So this project is in 2 parts, the first being a participatory workshop that was held remotely with a bunch of individuals within the Toronto Chinatown community, and is both sharing knowledge of photogrammetric scanning and interactive documentary using WebVR, and creating these sites of memory and revisiting our own personal memories and collective memory of Toronto's Chinatown, sort of imagined together and displayed together using WebVR, depicting each individual person's memory.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I'd like to continue talking about some of the decisions around each of your technological, our decision makings around the technological approaches, the form, the selection of tools that you've used to engage community, history, and colonial structures through digital media praxis. So maybe we work the other way around, Lillian.
Okay, so I'll go first. So kind of the technologies used being web VR, photogrammetric scanning, and sort of the remote workshop was kind of one talking about the benefits of interactive documentary being documentaries that are shown online and kind of breaking through this sort of linear narrative that usually exists in like traditional filmmaking, where there's only like a single author and director of these, that being able to collectively have these different stories told from different perspectives kind of broadens the reach of the stories told, and also allowing individuals to kind of be part of the creation process rather than being simply extractive. The workshop was held entirely remotely with accessible tools that most people within this audience and stuff can use. And this kind of also just breaking these boundaries of VR scanning that are currently not available, and allowing people sort of the power to sort of document their own histories using a lot of this emergent technology.
Okay, I'll go next. So speaking of technology, yeah, so my intent was to create a series of artifacts that would serve as examples of the in the futurist lens and the different intents of the lens. So the reason, like I thought it would be better to have like a series, so people because I want to create an opportunity for other creators to kind of seek inspiration and use in the future, like adapt in the futurism as their own. So I kind of use this different forms of contemporary media technologies for each artifact. Like I use virtual reality, I use volumetric videos for some, I use physical computing, I also use programming. And I use the affordances of these different technologies to kind of bring out the intended messaging, and to kind of like also serve as like different ways of presenting ideas. So that was my purpose. And I united these into a manifesto, and I created that in the form of video to make it so that it's accessible to the intended audience.
My main practice is as a filmmaker, but I was also trained as an architect. So I was really interested in this intersection of space and storytelling, and what you could do with 3D space that you could not do in 2 dimensions. And as a basis, like my project uses photogrammetry of different Toronto spaces rendered as point clouds to serve as the starting point for a discussion about the history. And I was really interested in this notion of history as haunting. So that really it uses virtual reality not as a way to lay everything out for you, but as a way to make you experience what it is like in the space, but also use audio and use this Afro-futurist character to tell you the history of these spaces that you may see every day, but that you have no idea what their names refer to.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, so to go, I'd like to ask Priya a question, and it's related to the framing of Indo-futurism. And from what you mentioned, it has a distinct approach from other post-colonial futurisms. Can you describe this approach, the relevant methods, and the potential impacts on audience members?
Sure. Yeah. So, like I described, that it does. Yeah, it seeks inspiration from post-colonial futurisms. For example, just like one of the intents of Afrofuturism is to position African people as to have agency of their own future. Similarly, in futurism, does that, and just like indigenous futurism is rooted in its cultural history. So that's where I seek inspiration from as well. But the way in which Indofuturism is distinct from these is that it also has a satirical narrative that is developed from critical and dark design methods. The reason I thought it was important to do this because there are certain social prejudices and challenges in the contemporary Indian society that kind of could also be addressed using this this lens. And the reason I use critical and dark design is because it gives an opportunity to allow discursive intervention for the audience, and so it kind of like implicates the audience to engage in this critically and to kind of like reflect on it. And then what I hope is that it would create, this would create an opportunity for people to kind of have a better understanding of the ramifications and of just kind of, and of these issues, and kind of also like try to address it, and also probably like inspire other artists to kind of like adapt it and kind of use it in their own way and contribute to this.
Great, that's great. Thank you. And Nadine, you like, I am your primary your primary advisor. So I've seen you within the last year, and you've completed a substantial amount of historical research for this project that investigates public histories, volumetric capture, and digital storytelling. And I was wondering if you can talk about the role of the voice and the virtual body in your project, and how the voice is a carrier for the information from this research and a driver for the narrative that you've constructed that to remind us about our complex relationships with colonial histories.
That's a long question. You know, I would say that, you know, one of the things that struck me about VR as opposed to two-dimensional storytelling is the gaze, like is the forcefulness of the gaze. And it's a different thing to, you know, look at a close-up on a film screen versus being in a space with a character that's looking at you intently, especially when they're in that intimate distance, which is now more than, you know, less than 6 feet. And there is something about kind of not being able to escape that gaze that makes it really, really powerful. And yes, I mean, I really, you know, the project is called Our Home in Haunted Land, right? So it's really about re-inscribing what has been erased or what has been, you know, lost through generations. I like, there's a William Faulkner quote that says, you know, the past isn't really dead, it isn't even past. And it's this whole idea of kind of breaking down the notion of linear time to have a more inclusive time. That means that, you know, the past is still very much alive in the present. And even if we're not aware of all the social constructions and the histories that we're carrying every day, they make up our society. So it was really the idea behind, you know, doing these immersive spaces was really to put people in various locations, but to really force them to look in a different way while somebody is telling them, you know, things that they may not know about. And I think that was the great emphasis behind the project.
That's great. Thanks. And And yeah, so Lillian, I've also worked with you closely too, and I'm like, this is a moment where I'm so happy. I've worked with Priya as well, and I'm so happy to see how these projects have developed and the ways that you're unpacking these themes and topics using digital media practice. But yeah, so for Lillian, can you describe your approach to designing these discursive spaces that you've made for community-focused workshops that engage participants to explore oral testimonies with co-design methods and virtual production? What were some of the considerations and challenges that you faced in this type of programming for participant groups? I've been to some of the workshops, and they're, like, they are carefully designed, and they're spaces where I think folks feel included and safe. So I'm wondering a little bit about some of the decisions around that. And
yeah, thank you for your question, Emily. So for my workshops, big part of them was speaking to the Toronto Chinatown community and creating dialogue with one another, which has been very difficult, one part just in the situation we're all living in, and also the absence of public space. It's very difficult doing a project about collective memory within a particular location when it's not quite safe to meet in that location too. But I feel like a lot of people, and also just all the things that have been happening in terms of how much Chinatown has been changing and how a lot of different neighborhoods have been changing, local businesses, and just a lot of the sentiments between like anti-Asian racism and stuff like that has made this project. It has been very difficult and but also very special at the same time. And I think a lot of that is leaving a lot of room for people to speak and to meet. That was kind of my central bit. So the workshops were about 6 sessions over the span of 7 weeks with one break in the middle, and trying to keep it very open for many individuals to pop in and participate. And everyone has and I've been teaching, things like photogrammetry and things about web VR and interactive documentary, but it's also been so great just hearing a lot of the participants and active co-creators speaking and sharing their own knowledge. Like there's such a wealth of knowledge within the community that isn't, simply Chinese knowledge. There's so much, like the whole discussion of diasporic and transnational experience, and being sharing with that with everyone and being able to revisit that every week was a very rewarding experience. So most of the workshops were held remotely, understanding the limitations that we had. But accessibility was one thing to kind of encourage dialogue, that everything is mostly using Zoom and trying to identify participation gaps or, gaps in taking on a lot of this technology. Like for people that don't know what photogrammetry is or VR, feels very out of like touch of what they usually do, that, a lot of these things are very accessible. And I think trying to promote that through a lot of open source and public or free or available technology helped a lot of people. And then in terms of the final output, which is sharing everyone's contributions, I think everything being web accessible is very exciting, that web VR doesn't need to be, these experiences don't need to be tied to very expensive headsets and stuff like that. You can visit this if you control a browser or a mobile phone and stuff like that. And I think just opening that space, opening what makes a documentary, was a very driving part in creating a very community focused workshop, and then allowing people a lot of time and space to kind of work on their creations and continuing to support them throughout the way past the workshop and even into these past few months leading up to the show as well.
Thanks. So just a closing question and a reminder that if you would like to ask anyone from this panel a question, you can find them in the breakout rooms that are coming up after our second panel. But the closing question is, you've completed this very hard, this work, right? Like your thesis work. And I want to ask you, what are some of the takeaways? What are the what you've seen or the immediate community contributions, and do you have future goals for these projects? Life after thesis.
Oops. Okay. Thank you for that question. Before I started my project, I really didn't understand why people didn't work more with point clouds. And now I know it's because they're extremely, technically difficult to work with. I think it's been a great experience doing a project that was both very content heavy and very technologically heavy at the same time. So it was a challenge to juggle. I've gotten a grant to do a 2D projection, large scale projection mapping version of the project, which will be somewhere in Toronto in October of 2021. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also, looking forward to, trying to make the project wider in scope. Like right now it starts from, 3 Toronto locations. And, there's an idea of, linking it to locations around the world and making it a larger project eventually.
Okay, I'll go next. So there are a couple of goals that I had in mind when I started off, and I kind of feel like when I did the user testing, I kind of saw a bit of success in that, like when the users tested the artifacts and they were able to contribute their voices to this project. So it was, in the end, it was not just my own voice, but there were multiple voices, and creating a rich discussion around these topics. So that was a huge win. And secondly, I hope that the activation of Indo-futurism would kind of lead to more of Indo-futurist dialogue in future studies. And I hope that Indo-futurism is used in the same conversations as other post-colonial futurism. It's a long way to go, but it's like a starting point. And for the community, I didn't kind of mention this, but it's the reason I got into this project was because I used to feel this kind of disconnect with my culture when I was back in India, because I didn't quite understand the way it was introduced to me. So this kind of gave me a refreshing perspective of it, and I hope that this inspires a similar connectedness to the Indianness for the youth of Indian descent, and they have an opportunity to kind of reconcile with their culture using this lens in the future. And yes, also I have been invited for I've been posting my work on social media, so I've been invited also for a talk in a podcast about my work. So that's kind of exciting for me. So.
And for mine, it's just, I think looking back on it, it was just a very rewarding experience being able to speak with a lot of people in the Toronto Chinatown community, and being able to work with sort of a core group of about 8 people going to the end and creating these spaces together. I wish they could all kind of be in this panel too, because this whole project is co-created with them. And I think, you know, their own stories play a really huge part in a lot of this coming together. And I'm very excited to see, you know, work on future iterations of this workshop framework and also the interactive documentary, into seeing, you know, what other new things people create, and, you know, allowing other people to also experience these memories together. It's been really inspiring hearing, you know, everyone that's participated, and just been really encouraging with this whole workshop and interactive documentary project. And it's also been so enjoyable, you know, seeing all these things that, you know, artists, designers, community members, activists and stuff are doing in Chinatown, not just Toronto's Chinatown, but, you know, across North America, across the world. I feel like it's a very difficult time, but, you know, it's also, I think, a lot of time that people are putting a lot of attention and a lot of energy into Chinatown. So, you know, there's also, there's hate, but then there's also, you know, a lot of joy too in sort of what's kind of happening, and I think what's going to happen, that, you know, it's really not the end, which is very overwhelming and exciting. And, you know, it's very, I'm, you know, really interested and excited to see how this project will continue to evolve in its future iterations.
Thank you. And I just want to say, like, I'm so moved by everyone's work, right? Like, I feel it in my body, and I want to, yeah, I feel it in my body, and I want to say thank you for sharing it. And I want to invite everyone to celebrate this very important work that that aims to reimagine the past and decolonize the future. So claps.
Thank you, everybody. That was wonderful. Thank you, Emily. I think what I want to do is I'll go straight to an introduction for the next panel. And just a reminder that we have 2 more panels tomorrow morning, so please do come out between 10 and 12 to see the students' work then. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our second panel, which will be hosted by Cindy Paremba, Digitizing Physicality, Embodiment Through Technology, with Jun, Leo, and Jessie.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, just getting organized. You'd think that we'd be better at doing this by the end of the term, but I am ever the outlier. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I'm really, I feel like I'm speaking for everybody at Digital Futures when I say this. I'm overwhelmed by the response to our grad show. This is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for coming. It's always challenging to follow the amazing Imani men when hosting, and I have learned that the best strategy is to not compete, but specifically acknowledge how wonderful the past panel is, and how excited I am to introduce our panelists for our second panel. So just as a quick reminder, all of the projects are available on dfthesis.com. So even as we're speaking, if you are interested in learning more about some of these projects, that's a great place to start. but also, although the panels are short and we're not doing a Q&A as part of the panels, our hope is that you will visit the breakout rooms, which will open up directly following this panel, and have an opportunity to talk one-on-one, or at least in a small group context, with the folks who are speaking here today about the project work, and in some cases also seeing some kind of additional aspects from that work as our panelists have set up their breakout rooms. I also remind everybody that you can also please feel free to directly message our panelists as well. With your questions, particularly if you want to let them know that you would hope to speak to them afterwards. That would be really wonderful. Thank you so much. So our panelists today, are speaking, have projects that have a really interesting interconnection between works that are more performative, or involve some aspect of performance, but that kind of integrate technology as a kind of as an integral or connective piece. And I think what I'm going to do is to follow the model of the earlier panel and ask each of our three panelists to take a brief moment and to talk in a few lines about their work, so that we have a context for their projects. We're here today with Jun Lee, with Neo Chen, and with Jessie at Yutong Zheng. So if it's okay, I'm going to ask Lee if you would perhaps start us off.
Yeah, so my project, generally speaking, my project provides interactive, unique tweeting experience. And I'm researching in how to identify interactive system artwork in the way of cybernetic thinking. And also I'm researching in how to engage remote participants in a different way and share the interactive experience around the results of artworks. Yeah.
Thank you. Jessie?
Project is actually using technology to address a Chinese concept called qi. I know some of probably have this like Hollywood films, and it's actually how I started my research. I realized Hollywood movies about qi or about Chinese culture actually having some misunderstanding about it. I guess I also understand why this happens, because
Sorry, Jessie, we're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, really?
You sound like a very futuristic robot.
Oh. Let me see.
What about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly clear.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, would it be okay to reiterate a little bit about what you said? It was almost followable, which is why I didn't interrupt you before, but yes.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so let me start again. So my name is Jessie, and so my project is actually using a technology to address the Chinese concept qi. I know a lot of you probably have seen this from Hollywood movies, and this is actually how I got started with my research, because I noticed some movies actually have some misunderstandings of this concept. So and also I understand it because it is kind of a slippery concept, because it doesn't have a fixed meaning. It is highly dependent on the context it is used in. So I thought, because this is also, so this is because I realized I guess the dominant influence right now in media is still like very English oriented. So I think like I could use this research as a opportunity to address some of these like non-English, misunderstood concepts. So I use this concept, and this is also actually a journey for me to like realize and also recognize some of the things that I fail to recognize because of my cultural background, because like as someone from Chinese culture, I tend to have assumptions. So I use technology. I worked with a Tai Chi practitioner, and we actually like talked about like how we could use haptic vest to address like how to I guess express like this kind, because Qi like in Tai Chi is like so okay, so the performer that I worked with, like his specific school of Tai Chi doesn't like really talk about Qi, because it's actually a very abstract concept that I just mentioned earlier. So but they do focus on this kind of internal energy. So I used this haptic vest to, just like capture or encompass some of these misunderstandings and like have a discussion with people about these kind of like philosophies, such as Qi behind Tai Chi, and some of this, like people, some of the things that people like actually have like misunderstanding of. Yeah.
Thanks.
Right. So,
Neo?
right. Hi, I'm Neo. So the title of my thesis paper is called, sorry. It's called Digital Fashion Metamorphosis, Fold and Unfold, with a creative outcome titled Neo-Metamorphosis. So Neo-Metamorphosis is an origami-inspired digital fashion show that includes 6 looks made with photogrammetric origami. So with the use of 3D image-based photogrammetry technique, the handmade origami was captured and turned into digital replica. And later on in this 3D software interface, the digitized origami was draped onto the digital body to create a digital fashion show that presents a sensational and visual experience. And this work aims to explore the potential in transformative materiality and look into the future of digital fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for pairing your introduction with a classic internet Zoom moment with your cat. So I wanted to take a slightly different approach than the last panel and to ask questions which I feel threads these projects together, hopefully in interesting ways. So for all of your projects, technology plays an essential role in a kind of performance of some sort. I wanted to ask how you would characterize the relationship between the human actors and interactors that are part of your work, and or even just kind of human physicality in relation in terms of bodies, and the technology actors, the kind of those performance mediators or those performance enablers or collaborators or helpers, however you would kind of describe what role technology is playing. So for this one, I was hoping that that Jesse, you would be able to start and just give us a little bit of a sense of how you see what you see the role of technology being in this relationship and in your work.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a very good question for my project, because the reason why I chose technology instead of any other tools to address the concept of Qi, well, other than the fact that I'm a digital future student, is because I realized because there's the literal translation, so the word translation for Qi is actually kind of limiting, because some concepts just there are just some words in a culture that doesn't exist in another. So for example, there are also like concepts in English that can't really be directly translated into Chinese. So I thought, you know, since qi is actually a concept very related to the body, because I guess, okay, this is going to be a gross generalization, but it is like in the body, I guess it's the flow of energy, but also there are also like other meanings, but I'm not going to like make it more complex. So I decided to use haptic vest because I think it can actually create a embodied experience for people. So instead of using words to explain a concept, I think allowing people to directly experience it with their body can actually have a more impactful understanding. So that's essentially how technology plays a part in my project. And it's also a very interesting relationship to work with the Tai Chi practitioner, because like something as flexible as Qi, actually technology has its limitation to address it, because I am using a you know, pre-manufactured haptic vest with like 40 haptic points on the body. So there are actually quite some limitation. So it's very interesting to, I guess, like to communicate with the Tai Chi practitioner and also like negotiate this kind of, you know, how I would envision it and how he sees it. So yeah.
Thanks. That's particularly cool to kind of to think about this like flow, this even just this like flow of like of design and information between, you know, your practitioner, between the technology itself, like what grammar you actually have to even work with it in terms of that, and you know, then your own work in terms of your design goals and your like hopes for this particular type of like understanding and experience in it.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if I could ask the same question or a similar question to Neil, because you have. I mean, it's interesting to kind of see how that technology. Technology kind of takes a different place within the work that you're doing, particularly because your outcome is entirely in, for lack of a better word, virtual space.
Yeah, sure. You know, in the traditional fashion industry, there has always been this need for like fashion show, fashion showroom, lookbook, etc., and to showcase the garments and accessories as a means to better exhibit the look and offer the customers and the viewers a clear idea of what the wearable piece will look like on a body. However, in my thesis project, the digital body doesn't only serve as the supporter of the origami garments, and to echo with what James Harris would describe for the physical fabric, the kinetic relationship between physical fabric and physical body. In my project, the digital body also acts as the interactor to enable this similar kinetic relationship with the digitized origami. So then the metamorphosis is happening from the beginning when draping the photogrammetric origami onto the digital body, and also happened during the constant change of form along with the movement of the digital body.
Very cool. As somebody who also works in this kind of in-between space between virtual objects and physical objects, and that kind of interplay and like blend between them, I find that kind of fluidity that you're describing is really is really interesting. And I am going to ask a follow-up question, which is going to cause you to probably reiterate a lot of the same points. But before doing that, I wanted to ask Lee if he could speak about the role technology is playing as an actor within his work.
Yeah. That's a wonderful question. Thank you, Cindy. So, so for me as a technologist, I do believe technology plays a very important role. A lot of my work shows at the intersection of art and technology. So back to my point, technology definitely contribute a lot to our relationship, to our life, and to our behavior, and how technology changed our normal life. Yeah, so basically that's my thoughts.
Yeah, so for your project too, like yours is very situated in these like cybernetic relationships as well. So even just on a like thinking about it on a conceptual level, like you're almost thinking about these interactions. I don't want to simplify it by saying thinking about them as a computer or as a technology or on a computational sense, but you are definitely approaching them from kind of a systems viewpoint, which I think is really quite interesting and unique.
Yeah, so as the purpose of this thesis research, the reason I choose cybernetic and researching in cybernetic is I picked up some a very particular theory from cybernetic called first order and second order and third order cybernetic relationship. So I'm trying to apply and map those concepts, for example, inputs, outputs, control, feedback, and the conversation, and map it into the interactive art. And for me to create a more like innovative and creative or interactive artworks, and I can make the interaction more efficiency and let the behavior become more interesting, and let the audience feel they are like real played with those interactive artworks. So basically having fun with the interactive artworks.
Very cool. Thank you so much. I was wondering if I could return to Neil really quickly, in part because, I think that you started to touch upon some other things that I want to ask everybody in your last response. So during the pandemic, we've necessarily seen a lot of previously physical interactions and experiences move into a virtual space with varying levels of success. You know, so, some things I think we're starting to sort out, we're starting to figure out, and other things we're still desperately trying to figure out different modes and different ways to make it work. So what I wanted to ask was whether or not you saw a fundamental difference between work in physical space versus virtual space, and feel free to completely destroy that binary. I don't mean to necessarily set it up, except that's easier to ask the question that way. So, and more specifically, you know, how do you see your work as being part of a hybrid space that bridges both, or just how do you kind of think about that physical virtual relationship in terms of the work that you're creating?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. I have to say that the constraint of the current COVID-19 pandemic, it's stimulating this urge for fashion brands and designers to look into 3D technology and digital space for fashion creation and ways to display their works. And that is also the reason that inspired me to situate my thesis project at the intersection of fashion and technology. And, you know, to apply technology with fashion is not something entirely new. It has been happening in the past few decades. Like Hossein Chatayan, Iris van Herpen, they've all been worked closely with technology. So, you know, because fashion is, as a creative industry, it always desire this fresh ideas, and the pandemic is just boosting that kind of need, and also like forcing the fashion industry to further explore the potential of digital fashion. So I feel like the core idea of both physical and virtual fashion experience is to showcase their creative works. So, but the digital space does offer a more capacity in terms of constructing abstract shapes, or and also provides less limitation to this practicability and wearability of digital garments. So in long term, I don't think we're gonna dive into like a fully digital fashion era, but I definitely see a hybrid fashion scene holds a huge potential in the building of the fashion industry. Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting to see so much work. This is such an exciting area to work in, and I know we've shared short conversations surrounding that as well. Just how much innovation and work is going on within this space that kind of brings it from being very, understandably focused on physicality and materiality. But then also is really started to kind of tendril out and branch out into experimenting with the virtual space. It's your project really sits in, I think, this area that just seems to have so much energy right now.
All right, thank you.
Jesse, could I ask? Actually, no, sorry. I think I'm gonna ask Lee to go next, if that's okay. I'm trying to switch up the order, and I'm losing track of folks overall. So just to quickly reiterate the question, what I was hoping you could talk a bit about is how you kind of negotiate this oftentimes very problematic boundary between kind of the material physical world and virtual digital spaces. Where do you see your work intersecting with that, or where do you see the interesting kind of interplay there?
Yeah, so that's really a really great question. So that's exactly one of my research question is how to engage remote participants in a different way and share the interactive experience around the result of artworks. As you know, right now we are facing the pandemic. A lot of our interactive media industry has been destroyed totally. So a lot of project events, concert has been moved to online, and nobody knows what will be the future will be like. So at the beginning of my thesis stage, I'm trying to creatively solve this question. So because nobody will know what will be the future, what's the future will be like. So instead of doing the real physical installation, as I mentioned before, I'm a creative technologist, do a lot of interactive artworks. So instead of doing a real physical installation, I decided to put my artwork online. And because I also want to engage the remote participants, like we are having the Zoom call, no matter where you are, you can we are talking to each other. So instead of doing that, I'm decided to put my installation. I call it virtual installation. I place it in your phone. So that's why I'm trying to make a virtual installation and provide an interactive tweeting experience, so that if you are sending a tweet and you are actually playing around this interactive artworks, you will see the results, and somebody else saw this outcome, they can also join into the interactive experience and having fun with this virtual installation. So that was that project breaks the boundary of where you are, and no matter which time zone you are in. And it's also a time-based interaction, and you can having see those tweets after 1 day or 2 days, and it will last forever. So that's how I solved this question problem.
I think what's so great about your work as well is that I hate the term digitally native, but it's so it needs to live online. It seems like that's its home. even as it kind of has these, it's also on your phone. It also involves, human actors and participants. But just kind of at its core, you can't picture how it would happen if it didn't happen on the platforms and in the form that it happened right now. So
Exactly.
it's really nice that you found that spot that a lot of people don't necessarily think about as being a performative space or an interaction based space, or a space to create this kind of artwork. I wanted to ask Jessie if she could speak about this kind of intersection between kind of physical spaces and virtual spaces. I mean, in particular, I know because we've been trying to figure out ways for you to best actually like instantiate your project and your work. And I know that the pandemic has complicated that in significant ways. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Mm-hmm. I was actually exploring this virtual experience, I guess, because so I didn't like pursue it further because of like technical limitations, but my future steps, I guess, for this project going forward is actually if I want to be able to have the Tai Chi performer, for example, in his own space, and then somebody else experiencing this haptic experience probably in another physical space, maybe like halfway across the globe. So like they can actually be networked together, but while this Tai Chi practitioner is performing in his own space, that data can get collected and then translated, manipulated by this gesture recognition system, and then and that can be networked to somebody else from like different places, different countries, and they can despite their physical location, can also like have this kind of cross-cultural experience. So I guess like in that sense, virtual experience, I don't know if this is virtual, but like this kind of like remote experience is very important, I think, for this project, because that can actually amplify this sense of cross-cultural communication that I intend to achieve.
Mm-hmm. And I think that even that your ability or your work to try to translate some of these very like intangible physical senses that surround Tai Chi performance through the haptic vest, it just kind of opens up that door to qualities that we often think about as being very ground in like the quote unquote real world, tied to physical bodies and physical performances. And even though the translation you're doing currently is over kind of a short distance, it's really cool to think about the potential for translating that into something where people are perhaps in remote locations and can share those aspects to share that connection in translating that experience.
Mm-hmm, for sure. It can also create a sense of community like all over the globe.
Yeah, I think right now, because we have the interpersonal communication channels and the intercultural communication channels that we have right now are, they seem so limited in a lot of cases because we're, talking over Zoom and we don't have that kind of physical connection. It really makes a project like this that, where you almost long to have that haptic vest to have that like physical connection with somebody else. It just, I think, makes it really poignant, because you don't even have to directly speak to like our desire for that touch, for that connection, and particularly in exploring these aspects of cultural intercommunication that are that have these intangible aspects to them that are hard to communicate. It's really, I think it becomes really important.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we're probably approaching time for our panel. I know Emma is time police.
Time police is coming to say maybe time to finish. It's time to finish the panel and to let everybody move to breakout rooms.
Yeah, I think that's it's a good good transition into various breakout spaces. So like anybody. So before we go, I wanted to make sure that I gave an extra special thanks to Jesse and Neo and to Lee for speaking with us today. If anybody has any closing comment or note towards their future, if you could sneak it in really quickly. I know Emma's the time police, but she's flexible. She can't do anything about it if you want to sneak a comment in. Okay. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to let you break off into your breakout rooms. We, as kind of folks on the primary chat here, are going to do our best to give you a tiny amount of time to kind of just set up and get ready in your breakout rooms. I'm going to hand things over to Emma.
Thanks, India. What a great panel. It was wonderful to hear students talk about their processes, methods, and projects. And it really left me wanting to sort of dive back into everybody's websites and to have deeper, further conversations. So thanks to everybody. And a reminder again that we have 2 more panels with the rest of the students tomorrow morning. So please do come back with your morning coffee to see the rest of the brilliance of our cohort.